Today's podcast is brought to you by Audible. Get a free audiobook download and a 30-day free trial at audibletrial.com/spookshow. Over 180,000 titles to choose from for your iPhone, Android, Kindle, or MP3 player. It's time for our latest spoiler-filled movie review here on
the All-American Spookshow podcast.
We take a deep dive into what makes each movie good or bad. Stick around at the end. Donnie has
connections from the credits,
linking each movie to past episodes. Will gives the official
kill count.
Professor Smoke gives us
gore score.
And of course, we all give our star ratings. As they say, on with the show. Hello and welcome to yet another edition of the All-American Spookshow Horror Podcast. I'm Josh and I'm joined here with Donnie.
Hey.
Will.
Hey.
And the Professor Smoke.
Up.
And we are here this week to kind of continue our somewhat unofficial, canon month that we've had going on. And this is the one that won the Patreon poll back in December. I know it's been a while coming, as far as like the payoff for the December Patreon poll, literally coming out here on the last day of January, but that was just the way it fell on our calendar, since we had some other stuff lined up. But we're here to talk about 10 to Midnight. Like I said, it won the December Patreon poll. It beat out X-Ray, a.k.a. Hospital Massacre, and Enter the Ninja. I was blanking for a second there what the other one was, but it was Enter the Ninja. It was close. It came down close between Enter the Ninja and 10 to Midnight, but Charles Bronson always comes out on top. That is what we're going to be talking about here today. I guess, before we get into it and before I toss the trailer and everything, I'll go ahead and throw out the usual information. You can email us, contact us at allamericanspookshow@gmail.com. You can find us on Twitter at AASpookshow, Instagram, Facebook, the Slasher app, TikTok. You should be able to find us by searching for All American Spook Show. We're over on our YouTube channel. We have a TeePublic page where we sell the logoed merchandise and some other cool designs. We need to throw up a couple of new designs. It's been a few minutes since we put anything new up on TeePublic, so we need to get around to that. But yeah, that's all there. You can go down to the link tree below, click on that, and you'll see all the links to everything we got there.
Oh yeah, no, I was saying we should do a shirt for 10 to Midnight, something like a certain instrument on the front and on the back. Say, you know what this is for? Something like that. Yeah.
You know what this is for? And then just some like crude outline drawing of that specific item.
We'll get to.
It would have to be some cartoonish, crude drawing, because who the hell would want that on a shirt? Anyways, yeah, you can go down to the Linktree link down in the show notes there, and you'll see a link to all these things that we mentioned. And of course, the big thing is we want you to go join our Patreon. It's patreon.com/AASpookshow. We just updated some of the tiers. We've added some other cool stuff. We just recently have been talking about it over, on Deadline Horror News, which is every Wednesday live over on our YouTube channel, every Wednesday night at 9 p.m. We were talking about the two new series that we're going to be interjecting here. One's going to be here on the regular podcast feed, and the other one's going to be over on Patreon. The first series is going to be called Cult Corner, and that's going to be here, like I said, we're going to intersperse it here starting in the month of February. Into the regular podcast feed. And basically the whole premise is, here's some cult movies that are not horror related. So obviously we're a horror podcast, so that's our main focus. That's what we do. But we wanted to kind of mix in some other movies that we all like, to kind of, give some different flavor, and add some stuff that we wouldn't normally be able to talk about because it's not a horror movie. So that's going to be starting up very soon. Matter of fact, it'll start 3 weeks from the airing of this episode. Will be the first Cult Corner episode. That'll be episode 96 on February 21st. And the other new series that we're going to have is going to be over on Patreon, and it's called Crapster Piece Theater. Now, it's pretty self-explanatory, really, with the title of it. But basically, it's going to be the worst of the worst. Just some of the worst movies that maybe people suggest to us. Maybe we have a poll up on the socials. Actually, for that one, it's going to be like a poll probably over on Patreon. So patrons will be able to decide which of the shittiest movies we can think of, which one would you like us to watch and talk about, because that's going to be a Patreon exclusive. And now those could be anything. Like, that doesn't have to be a horror or non-horror or whatever. Like, that can be literally anything. Just a shitty movie and you'll get to listen to us over on Patreon talk about that. So it should be a lot of fun. So join us at patreon.com/AA Spookshow for that. And of course, over on Patreon, we've also got written articles from the Professor's retro reviews, any other written articles that we have. Those are on there. We've got Crapster Piece Theater coming. We've got the Spookshow Rewind every month. And, of course, those weekly video minisodes every Tuesday with the Library of the Professor. All that stuff. And exclusive polls and much more. Early access to episodes over on Patreon. So come join us, please. Patreon.com/AA Spookshow. We got various levels. All the way from $1 up to a crazy $1,000 level. So plenty of tiers. If you can afford a cup of Starbucks coffee, you can afford to easily afford to come join us over on Patreon. Trust me, a lot of cool stuff, a lot of stuff you won't get here on the regular podcast feed. But as far as the regular podcast, it's always free, it's always here, and lots of cool stuff always coming there. So just wanted to kind of throw that out there. So I guess before we get into the background and the movie itself, I'll go ahead and throw to the trailer for the Charles Bronson canon cult classic, 10 to Midnight.
A sensational crime. An airtight alibi.
We can't lay a finger on this guy.
And a chain of evidence.
Bring him in.
Charles Bronson is a cop looking for a killer, and he's running out of time.
Go ahead, take me in. You can't punish me.
When the guilty go free, the system is the crime.
I'm a mean, selfish son of a bitch. But I want to kill her, and what I want comes first.
Well, how come I've never heard him mention a daughter?
It seldom crosses his mind that he has one.
He's one angry man with someone to protect.
How long are you with your father?
He can make a difference.
You like hurting girls?
I won't answer that.
Girls won't have anything to do with you, but you get back at them, don't you?
I won't listen to your filth. Gotta remind you about evidence obtained under duress? It's inadmissible, Leo.
We got no evidence that we can't hold this kid.
He's our man, Captain. I'm gonna get him. Found some blood.
He's lying. There was no blood on my clothes, and he knows it. How do you plead, Warren?
Guilty or not guilty? Not guilty.
The last thing I want to do is get involved with a cop.
Well, I don't blame you. I went back to the lab and I talked to the technician. And I asked him if
Why didn't you ask me?
True, Lieutenant. You planted the evidence.
You know why.
we could nail him sooner or later.
After counting how many more dead.
He had to be stopped.
Forget what's legal, do what's right.
After all the evidence is in, he'll reach his own verdict and execute the sentence by the deadline when there is no justice. This man is the law. 10 to Midnight. Charles Bronson, Lisa Eilbacher, and Andrew Stevens in a Golan Globus production of a J. Lee Thompson film, 10 to Midnight.
All right, so there you go. So I guess, we'll give our star ratings and everything at the end like we normally do. And I don't want to get too much into, your initial thoughts and stuff off the top here because I want to save the good stuff for the end. So we'll leave that there. But we do have a little bit of a taste here. Now, last week here on the Spook Show, we had a special guest. We had film historian / author Paul Talbot, who's, probably one of the foremost experts in the career and life of Charles Bronson. We had him on the show last week. And we had a chance after the interview that you heard last week to talk to him a little bit more about 10 to Midnight and get his star rating on it. So I'll go ahead and, this is obviously a pre-recorded segment. So I'll go ahead and toss to that now so you can hear his thoughts on it.
10 to Midnight, I would give a 5-star rating. I think it's a perfect movie. It perfectly captures, perfectly succeeds doing exactly what it wanted to do. It's a suspenseful movie, a scary movie, a shocking movie. Also, very important, it captures that era. The early 1980s, the era where people were really trying to shock people. The 1970s, the cinema had a lot of freedom in terms of nudity, violence, foul language, sexual subject matter. So the 80s had to take it up a notch. 10 to Midnight certainly does. It's filled with nudity, strange characters, violence. It's a combines a slasher movie with a brutal cop movie, and I think it perfectly captures that. It's a good example. It's a good introduction for Charles Bronson. If people have not seen a Charles Bronson movie, that's a good introduction. Certainly, if people haven't seen a Bronson movie from the 1980s, that's a good example. It's certainly one, even nowadays, even though it's, what's it going on, 30 years now, almost 40 years.
Almost 40, yeah.
It's still a shocking movie. Still, people watch it now is kind of like, whoa, what did I just see? Beginning with almost like the first scene with the killer. I won't give anything away because for those who haven't seen it, but it's still a shocking, powerful movie. Also a good example of a canon movie. If you've never seen a canon movie, it's a good introduction.
All right, so there you go. That's what Paul had to say about it. Like I said, we'll get into our thoughts and our star ratings at the end and see how it stacks up. But yeah, that's pretty lofty praise, wouldn't you say, Smoke?
Oh yeah, that's Well, I won't get into our thoughts going down that path yet. But yes, that is definitely lofty praise.
Before we get into the movie itself, we'll go ahead and go through some of the usual information that we pull. There is another title for this movie. I don't know if you guys saw this anywhere, but the original script title for this movie was Bloody Sunday.
Did not hear that.
Yeah,
No. That's news to me.
Bloody Sunday, and then eventually, obviously they just changed it to 10 to Midnight, and that's what it was released pretty much, wherever it was released around the world. Honestly, not to get too much into the movie, I don't think either of these titles really make a whole hell of a lot of sense as far as what the movie is, right? Like, is Bloody Sunday any worse or better than 10 to Midnight? As far as a title for this particular story that they're telling.
No, it's not. I don't think it's any. Well, I don't think it's any better or worse. I think it maybe leans into the horror aspect a little bit more. In the 10 to Midnight title, just even though it doesn't really pertain much to the movie, leans into the. You think of a thriller or maybe a police procedure or something when you hear that title.
Yeah, I mean, but even what they eventually landed on, 10 to Midnight, like that does that title make really any sense as far as like the movie itself? It's not like I'm thinking like with a title like 10 to Midnight is my point. It feels like there should be like somewhat of a running clock going on, like something's going to happen at a certain point, so like this is the rush to get there kind of thing, like to stop it before it happens. But like there's nothing like that going on, right?
No, there's no real. I mean, there's some the tense moments that happen near the end of it, but nothing like not necessarily a race against the clock. I mean, not literally,
Yeah.
They are get to a certain point without getting to that part of this plot yet. They're trying to get to a certain point, but yeah, it's not like time had necessarily anything to do with it. So I don't know why that title was chosen necessarily, or even chosen a Bloody Sunday title.
I'll go more specific to what we've talked about here on the show recently. I think 10 to Midnight works better as a title for New Year's Evil.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, that's probably it. Yeah. Agreed. Yeah,
but
that's probably a better title than Jesus.
Well, New Year's Evil, they probably just call it that because, all right, it's happening on New Year's and it's evil. And the guy's name is Evil. And
we
then
have the first New Year's, New Year's slasher movie title.
Yeah.
Just like, this is Friday 13th, we need to have the New Year's Halloween or the New Year's slasher title out there. So
I
can definitely chose New Year's in the title, but
I'm fully convinced at this point that they wrote and recorded that song before they ever had a script for the movie. That's just my thoughts. They started with the song and then worked their way backwards, I think.
I think they probably themselves were listening to that song on loop as they were writing the script.
Yeah, and doing lots of heavy drugs.
Yeah.
But the movie was released March 11th, 1983, of course, by the Cannon Group / City Films, which, was basically just a production group of Cannon. And it was distributed, of course, by Cannon Films. It was rated R, total runtime of 1 hour. I'd say rated R, that's a hard R, by the way. If for nothing else, the nudity, right? The total runtime is 1 hour and 41 minutes, and it was filmed in various locations around Los Angeles, starting around October 25th of 1982. So, sometime like late October and I'm sure into November of 1982 was when this was filmed, for a budget of $4.5 million that I could find. And then it grossed a little over $7 million, so $7.1 million in the time that it was out. I don't think it played very long, from what I could gather. But when it debuted, it was number 2 in the box office that particular weekend. And not to get too deep into the box office numbers, but I'll go ahead and read off the top 5 from that particular weekend of March 11th through the 13th, 1983. Number 5, 48 Hours, was in its 14th week. So that's what?
Damn.
That's almost 4 months. It had been out, and it was still number 5 in the box office. The other big debut that weekend at number 4, Trenchcoat. Number 3, Gandhi. And that had also been out for 14 weeks. And number 2 debut, 10 to Midnight, made a little over $3 million in its opening weekend. And of course, it's got it listed as distributed by MGM. I think they had that brief little partnership with MGM UA around this time period when this came out. And then, of course, I shouldn't say of course, but number 1 at the box office for apparently a long-ass time in its 13th week, Tootsie was still raking it in at the box office. So 10 to Midnight lost to Tootsie that week. That's your little random box office snapshot.
Are there worse movies to? Nah, I'm just kidding. No.
For me, the big part of this box office numbers was the movie Trenchcoat, which to this point I've never even heard of, and it was number 2.
Yeah, no, it was it was number 2 as far as like what opened that week, but it was number 4 that particular week. All I see about Trenchcoat here, without digging any deeper, was that the synopsis says an aspiring mystery writer becomes accidentally embroiled in an international plot during a 2-week stay in Malta. Why did a bunch of shit happen in Malta in 80s movies? You ever notice that?
It's an exotic location.
On IMDb, it had 6.3 out of 10 stars. It only has a 12 on the Metacritic Metascore, so that's pretty low there. Over on Rotten Tomatoes, on the tomato meter, it's 40%, and the audience score is 50%. It was directed by J. Lee Thompson. He is mostly known for the Guns of Navarone. He directed a couple of the Planet of the Apes movies, back in the 70s, the original run. Conquest of the Planet of the Apes and Battle for the Planet of the Apes. Now, apparently I saw somewhere where he was supposed to direct the original Planet of the Apes, but he was busy doing another movie at the time. I think I read that it was McKenna's Gold that he directed at that time period, so he wasn't able to do that. But he also directed the original Cape Fear back in 1962, as far as like movies related to horror and things that would be more interesting to our audience. He also directed Happy Birthday to Me, a couple years before this in 1981. And he directed a handful of other Cannon movies a little while after that, and another Bronson movie at least, The Evil That Men Do, that came out a year after 10 to Midnight, and a couple Cannon movies, King Solomon's Mines, Death Wish 4, The Crackdown. So he definitely had a relationship with Charles Bronson because he had directed a number of things that he was involved in. He also got a uncredited story writing credit for this, which I guess uncredited credit, right? It's kind of an oxymoron, but you get the point. It was written by William Roberts. William Roberts would mostly be known for writing one of Donnie's favorites, Major Payne from 1995.
Fuck you for that.
The Last American Hero, The Magnificent Seven. He was the writer on that. 28 writing credits. So definitely a modest amount of success. Of course, it stars Charles Bronson as Leo Kessler. Obviously, we just talked to Paul Talbot last week about Charles Bronson, so we don't need to go too deep there because we did, we didn't take a deep dive into his career, but we did, a fairly good overview and talked about 10 to Midnight and some other movies that he did for Cannon and stuff like that. But he had 164 acting credits over the course of his career, and that's according to IMDb, and those date all the way back to 1949. He was in an episode of the series Fireside Theater. So he had a good amount of success all the way, throughout the 50s and into the 60s and stuff. And of course the 70s and everything with, the first Death Wish movie that came out in 1974. I guess that was kind of like one of the big ones, right? He's been in a ton of other stuff, but that was one of the big ones. He was also in Once Upon a Time in the West, which is, another classic epic Western flick from 1968. The Great Escape in 1963, The Magnificent Seven, just some classic, movies of the 60s and 70s there. But if you want to hear us talk, more and in depth and honestly with a professional on Charles Bronson, go back and listen to last week's episode with Paul Talbot, where we'll go more into that. 10 to Midnight also stars Lisa Eilbacher. Other than 10 to Midnight, she is best known for being in Beverly Hills Cop, the original from 1984. She was in An Officer and a Gentleman, a year before 10 to Midnight came out, and then in 1989 she was in Leviathan. She just basically, from what I can tell, she basically just left the business high and dry in 1995. Pretty much all of the last credits that she has on IMDb as pretty much anything other than herself. She just, she was in a couple, literally like 4 or 5 TV movies that wrap up like in the early to mid 90s, and then that was it. The part of Paul McCann in the movie was played by Andrew Stevens. He has 93 acting credits on IMDb, and he's still active today. He's still in stuff. It looked like he kind of took a little bit of a hiatus there, like from 2010 to 2018. He wasn't really in much, but since then he's been fairly active in a handful of projects. He would best be known for, I guess other than in this role here in 10 to Midnight, he was in the producer of The Boondock Saints, 3,000 Miles to Graceland, The Whole Nine Yards, The Pledge. So like I said, acting credits is 93, but he's got 135 producing credits. And those date back to 1979 was his first one, a TV movie, but then after that, 1990, and then it was pretty steady after that. So he clearly went into producing, I guess after his the main part of his acting career was over. So lots of good stuff attributed to his name. A couple more here. We got Gene Davis, who plays Warren Stacy, the main baddie in this movie here. He is best known for this, and he had a role in another episode that we've done in the past. I don't remember what episode it was right off the top of my head, but it was The Hitcher from 1986. He played Trooper Dodge in that that movie, which was an episode that we did.
It's episode, let me look real quick. That was episode number 15 in the Spookshow archives.
Yeah, I knew it was a while back. I couldn't put a number on it, but I knew that was like, really early on when we did that. Will, I'm sure you remember his role in The Hitcher fondly, right?
Oh, who wouldn't? Right?
I mean, Trooper Dodge really stood out. Especially for that movie, since you love that movie so much, is why I tossed to you, if you didn't get it there.
No, I got
it. A Rutger
Still waiting for something to happen in that movie.
Well, now, calm down there, Hoss. A Rutger Hauer classic, and you just continue to belittle that movie.
And then?
Well, that's all I got. He was.
Why do you hate it so much?
I wouldn't necessarily say it was that you hated it, right? It was just you weren't excited about it.
I just wasn't as in love with it as y'all were. It was just a lot of downtime in that movie.
Once again, go back in the archives. Would you say episode 15? That sounds about right. Go back and check that episode out and just get his feelings on that. He was also in, I'm talking about Gene Davis, going back to him. He was also in The Relic. He was in Universal Soldier in 1992. 31 acting credits on IMDb. And although this is a pretty memorable damn role, right? I'll bring up another couple of cool character actors that were in this movie. Jeffrey Lewis is Dave Dante. Now he's the guy that plays in this movie. He's the lawyer for Warren Stacy. That's that guy. But he actually unfortunately passed away back in April of 2015 at the age of 79. But he was also in another episode that we've done. He was in The Devil's Rejects. He was in The Way of the Gun, Double Impact, Night of the Comet, which is, obviously we always say this, but that's definitely one that we need to get around to here on the show. But one of those character actors that was in everything in like the 70s and 80s. I mean, every other show or movie you turn it on, this guy had some small role in it. 226 acting credits on IMDb, and literally worked all the way up until the time of his passing. And the last thing he was in actually came out 2 years after his death. That was a movie called High and Outside, a baseball noir. But yeah, wonderful character actor. And another really good one that pops up in this movie, that actually has a bigger role, honestly, was Wilford Brimley. Now, I think this is the first time we've had old Wilford Brimley in any of our movies, right? Or unless I'm blanking on one.
No, we
did do Cocoon.
Absolutely correct.
So, you're forgetting by that time we did Cocoon.
I don't think we've done Cocoon here.
We have not, but we could put it on the list for Cold Corner.
Yeah. And to me, he was also one of those dudes. Now, unfortunately, Wilford Brimley passed away back in August of 2020. But even when he died, it was like, dude, I thought he died a long time ago, kind of thing. But like, nah, he was still around, Although his parts were sporadic after like say 2001, 2002. He really wasn't in much. Off and on anymore after that. But, yeah, obviously you alluded to it there. Cocoon would probably be the one thing that everybody would be like, possibly recognize him from the 80s. Also, The Thing. He was Dr. Blair in The Thing, John Carpenter's version from 1982. I'd say those would be the two biggest you would remember him from. And, of course, every meme on the internet about diabetes. Is because he had
I'm sorry, what did you call it?
Oh, I'm sorry, diabetes. That was him because it was like it was like some old diabetes commercial or something, right? Wasn't that what it was that came from? And then maybe it was one of those like late night commercials that was on like, for the old people or something like that, or early in the morning commercials. And he would be talking about diabetes. And so it always just
Yep.
It always just stuck with with the masses with him. But so yeah, he was also in The Natural and the Kevin Kline movie In and Out. So a long career, Unfortunately, like I said, he's no longer with us. I'll bring up one other name before we move on to the movie itself here, just because it's a small role, but it's interesting. Kelly Preston as Doreen. She would go on to be in, Battlefield Earth, Jerry Maguire, For Love of the Game, What a Girl Wants, handful of other things. 73 acting credits, but she was also married to John Travolta for many years until her unfortunate passing in July of 2020. I think she died of some type of cancer or something like that. Really, that's about all I had, just on the surface. Was there anything you guys wanted to bring up before we got into the movie itself?
No, man. You pretty much hit it, on the head. Aside from Phoebe Cates, man, Kelly Preston, 80s crush, bro.
Yeah, she was prime cut back in the 80s, man, no doubt.
Oh, yeah, Donnie mentioned Phoebe Cates. That was definitely a big crush back in the 80s.
About Kelly Preston real quick. This movie was really like her first full-length feature film debut, really, because everything on IMDb that she has up to this point, there was 1, 2, 3, 4 episodes of like random TV shows like Hawaii Five-0 and The Renegades and stuff. So this basically, and her name wasn't even Kelly Preston credited in this movie. It was Kelly Palzis in this movie. So like, yeah, 10 to Midnight is basically her feature film debut because she didn't do another film until Metal Storm: The Destruction of Jared Sin. I have never heard of that, but it sounds interesting. And then, of course, she was in Christine, the classic Stephen King, John Carpenter flick.
What is it? Hey, why, it's Buttercup. Popcorn, add some butter to hot popcorn. Mix it up, wrap it up, Buttercup is born.
It's delicious.
So nutritious.
It's a taste delight.
It's so munchy.
Crisp and crunchy.
You'll enjoy each bite. Eat butter-drenched Buttercup. Popcorn at its best.
Served in a king-size cup.
It beats all the rest.
For you, the listeners of the All-American Spook Show podcast, Audible is offering a free audiobook download with a free 30-day trial to give you the opportunity to check out their service. So I just went on Audible and typed in Charles Bronson to see what would come up. Now, Paul Talbot that we talked to last week, he wrote probably, 2 of the more definitive books about Charles Bronson that we know of. And that's what we're going to consider here on Spook Show to be the creme de la creme. But from what I can tell, those things aren't available on Audible. There is no audio book version of those books. But we do highly encourage you to go out and find those, from Paul Talbot. But what I could find on Audible, just typing in Charles Bronson, was American Legends, The Life of Charles Bronson by Charles River Editors. That one's only a little over an hour long, 1 hour and 8 minutes. So it's brief, but I'm sure, you get a little bit about the background about his early life and everything on that one. And really just, at a quick glance, that's I found a podcast, but like other than that, like I'm not really finding anything else about Charles Bronson as far as audiobooks are concerned. There's another book here called Behind Bars, Britain's Most Notorious Prisoner Reveals What Life is Like Inside by Charles Bronson. But I don't think it's the same Charles Bronson.
No, that's definitely a different guy.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah. Oh, that's a whole other thing. Yeah, you talking about the British guy?
Yeah.
He did take his name from he took his name from Charles Bronson, the actor. But yeah, that's
he was a fighter.
Actually, Charles Bronson that was directed by the guy that directed Drive. I think he called himself Charles Bronson. He might have been nicknamed Charlie Bronson, but he basically took that nickname from the actor Charles Bronson.
Well, if you want to hear more about his,
that's a whole nother thing we'll get into.
Yeah, well, if you want to hear more about his story, there's the audiobook there on Audible. So to download your free audiobook today, go to audibletrial.com/spookshow. Again, that's audibletrial.com/spookshow for your free audiobook. So, yeah, that's interesting. But I'm surprised that there's not more books. And maybe that's where Paul Talbot's book, kind of falls into the, almost really like, what we're going to have coming up next week when we're going to talk to author Austin Trunick about his book, The Canon Film Guide. When you really start digging around, man, there's not a lot of books on, say, like Canon Films, and there's not a lot of, it doesn't look like there's a whole hell of a lot of books on Charles Bronson either. So maybe these guys picked the right thing to dive into, as far as like being the definitive source for those particular subjects. But yeah, that's a little tease to next week, by the way. Too, we will be talking to author Austin Trunick about the Canon Film Guide, and so we're all looking forward to that, and you should be too. To make sure you stay tuned here to the podcast feed for that one, because I think it's going to be a good one. But anyways, I guess we'll go ahead and get into the movie itself. Now, 10 to midnight, it starts with basically a scene setting up that Bronson's character in this, Leo Kessler, that he's a cop and he's an asshole. That's literally like all this opening, this little cold open scene achieves.
Oh.
Like, I think doesn't he even deliver the line like something along the lines I'm an asshole or something, but like I can't even remember the direct line. What did he say, Smoke? Right off the top.
Yeah, I don't remember the direct wording of it either. Right,
Yeah, basically, I don't have to be friendly to catch the criminals kind of line,
Yeah.
And then that's where you get the credits. Basically, you come right in and you're introduced to to the main bad guy or whatever, the villain of the movie, Warren Stacy, who basically is just a pervert and a creep on ladies, and if they spurn his advances, he's probably going to come around and kill you while he's butt naked. That's pretty much what you gather from the first handful of minutes here, right, Will?
Yeah, and the part, not to necessarily jump ahead, but it's his running theme of getting butt naked and running around. Now, he does this to make sure that there's no evidence on him.
Yeah, but they never address that. They never say that. I guess you just have to put it together. That's why he's doing it.
I agree, but even if you were naked, there's blood splatter.
Yeah.
Then when you go to put your clothes on, smearing it on your clothes.
Even if you're butt naked, you're still going to be like stepping around in it and leaving like, not fingerprints obviously, but like toe prints and stuff, right? Like there's probably something they could get out of that, right? If they got your damn footprint in blood.
Possibly, but what if it's upside down?
And you got me good with that one. I don't know. I don't know how you could figure things out if you have upside down fingerprints. Thanks, Malignant. But yeah, like basically you just establish like, all right, this guy's a perv, and if you say no, oh fuck you, I'm coming back and I'm going to kill you, and and I'm going to be butt naked chasing you through the forest like Wang Chung tonight, full on hog running through the damn woods to come kill your ass. I'll say this: it's an eye-opening first like 10-15 minutes here, right? Like as far as all the stuff involved with him is concerned.
Well, also of note too, while we're talking about the whole blood and DNA and all that, one thing I came across and didn't realize, doing a little bit of research on this movie, was the movie was made in 1982, and that was 2 years before DNA started to be used in criminal investigations. So I guess there's a little bit of of credence to him stripping down, and you're still going to get some blood on you and whatever, but I don't know. I guess they just didn't. It wasn't as meticulous of a investigation with DNA as it is now. I'm sure you try to do this now, and it's not going to help you at all.
No.
You'll just be stripping down naked for the hell of it, I guess.
Well, that's kind of.
Excuse me, sir. Is this one of your short and curlies? It looks like it.
You sick bastard. I mean, that's kind of what I thought was going on at first. Like, man, this dude, he must get his rocks off, right? Like, that's his thing. But like, I never got that vibe later on. Like, I don't think that's why he was doing it. I think he was just doing it to not have blood and shit on his clothes, right? So like, that was his way of trying to get I guess basically maybe it was a plot device to get to what eventually happened with Leo, right? You think that's probably what it was? Like, that he planted the blood on his coat or whatever. If there was blood on it, he's like, nope, I know there was no blood on it because that's not how I killed.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm sure in some
By the way,
aspects.
it takes a ton of confidence to be running around through, I'm guessing at least like a good fifth of this movie butt naked.
Yeah. You mean as an actor?
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah. Balls of steel. I'll give him that. And they were
for the world to see.
Yeah, and they were on display. So Leo, of course, and his partner that you get introduced to, Paul, they're on the case. The girl that he kills in this opening scene that Warren kills just happens to be a friend of Leo's daughter, Lori. So then Warren goes in. He hears. I forget how he overheard them talking about the diary, right? Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, it was at the funeral.
He was at the funeral and heard her mention to him about her having a diary. Yeah.
So he goes to her house and looking for the diary. Her roommate walks in, and then he kills her. I think did he walk in naked or did he get naked when she showed up? I don't remember that part. I'm thinking in my head like I don't think he was naked at first when he's just trying to get the diary.
Was it? Because I guess he knew nobody was home and he broke in to try and get the diary. That he wasn't. And then she came home while he was in the midst of trying to break open the drawer. And then he did right. He got in the closet and then I guess he got naked then.
Yeah, I'm just thinking of that. Like he went out of his way to get naked. Oh shit! I'm gonna have to go kill somebody now. Time to get naked. And then of course he does all that, and he opens up the drawer, and the diary's already gone. So apparently Leo, the cops, they've already been there and took the diary. So they come to question Warren about his history with the girl, or whatever, because apparently they work together, right? Yeah, the one that he killed at the beginning of the movie. They work together, so Leo and Paul come to question Warren about it, and this is when they're looking. Leo goes to the bathroom. They're kind of snooping around his apartment, and he finds a penis pump in the bathroom. So then, basically, I guess it kind of jumps here a little bit, right? Like all of a sudden, like, well, we've done our questions, everything checks out. We'll talk to you later, and then all of a sudden they just haul him in, like all right, we brought you in. We've kind of arrested you or whatever on, not arrested, but they've brought him in for questioning. And then Leo's giving him the 10th degree there, and brings out the penis pump, and then that's where you get the the famous penis pump scene here, where he says, "What's this for? What's this for, Warren? You know what this is for? This is for jacking off." Now, really, but my real question here is why? Like, what did that have to do with anything? Like, what's the penis pump guy? Like, all right, that's what he uses to do his business. Like, what did that have to do with the case? Like, is it to show he's just a pervert?
Or the rest of the movie?
Yeah, that too. It never comes back up. Not that I was looking for it to come back up or anything, but just saying. But that was a
writer. There's probably a writer said, I want to have Charles Bronson holding this and flapping this Peter pump around, saying, "You know what this is for? It's for jacking off."
Yeah, that's for jacking off.
But this would be hilarious.
Oh, and it was, and it's also the most animated you'll see Charles Bronson in a lot of his movies, because usually he's like the cool, calm, like I'm gonna kill you right now, kind of, actor in his movies. But in this one, like he kind of raises his voice and gets kind of pissed about it, like, "What is this for? You know what I has this for? Jacking off." So anyways, so like basically they got nothing on Warren, so they have to cut him loose. And then of course Warren immediately goes home and calls Leo's daughter Lori, and is dirty talking to her, like like almost as bad, if not worse, than like the shit we heard in Black Christmas. The guy calling. Except this is just like coming right out with it. "I'm gonna eat your pussy," and then like she tries to play along with it and like, no, you're not gonna do it the way I said. I'm like it's just fucking awkward and weird and pervy. And he calls himself Pedro, like he's speaking some Spanish or whatever. They're concerned about Lori, so Paul decides to go with Lori to a party, and then they towards the end of the party they kiss. So now they kind of got a thing going on as they're together. Like I think while they were like making out, the phone rings, and it's Warren calling again with the same bullshit. Like, "I'm gonna come and eat your ass," whatever the hell he says. And, "My name's Pedro, by the way."
Lucky.
He's pretty a terrible like Mexican Spanish/Mexican accent. Terrible.
Yeah. So like basically all that does is allow them, because they've hooked up some device to the phone to record the conversation. So now I guess they feel they've got enough evidence. Like, yeah, this dude talking on the phone here, it matches to the recording we have of Warren when we brought him in for questioning. So they use.
By the way, that stuff right there, like the voice pattern recognition guy.
That's not voice pattern recognition. It's just like, "Hey, listen to this. Now listen to this." Yep, that's the same guy.
It's just like quicksand when I was a kid, man. Like I thought those things were going to be big when I grew up, and they never come into play anywhere.
You mean like when you're young, like in life, like, oh yeah, voice pattern recognition is going to be a thing. I'm going to run. I'm going to run into quicksand every time I go somewhere.
Yeah, like every TV show it felt like in the '80s. Like had quicksand and a voice guy.
Yeah. So, anyways, Leo goes down to the evidence room and then like takes some like a vial of blood, or not even really like a vial. He just like takes the vial, takes a little bit of blood out, and leaves out while he's like distracting the guy with like a tape so they can match the tapes or whatever. So then they arrest Warren because they found blood on the jacket. Then eventually Paul puts it together that Leo planted the blood on the jacket, and then Leo admits it to him, and then they go into the courtroom, and then basically they dismiss the case, and Leo is fired. Now, what would probably happen in reality is Leo probably would have been arrested, movie over, right?
Well, then also he probably wouldn't have admitted to a relatively young cop that he planted evidence.
Yeah, like he didn't spend really any time at all like shaming him either. Like, man, you know this is fucked up. Yeah, it was. I'm gonna go admit to it. You know, like he puts up no fight. Yeah, you're right. Fucking shit. Here we go. All right, I did it.
He was after my daughter, but what can I do?
Yeah. So Warren, of course, he's he gets out. They dismiss it, so he's out, and then immediately calls Leo to threaten him, and of course threaten Laurie and everything. So basically, Leo turns the tide and starts stalking him back and like threatening him back, right? Like he's driving down the road, like just driving beside him and smiling at him. And I think I messaged you guys like while I was watching it, like, dude, like Charles Bronson's the last dude I want smiling at me, like, you know. There's just,
yeah, we mentioned that. Yeah.
There's just something creepy about that motherfucker smiling at you, you know, like, oh hell, I'm gonna die today, aren't I? Oh God.
And then he puts the photos of the crime victims at the guy's place of business, at the place where the guy works, right, on the bulletin board in his office.
Yeah, he works for like, I don't even know what this company is that he works for. It's like a typewriting company. What the shit is this?
Yeah.
So then Warren goes out and gets a prostitute, and then immediately poisons her. Like, I get like he's trying to distract him, right? Like, because he knows that Leo is following him and everything. But what's the point of like just poisoning her and then like skipping out the window? Like, I was thinking at first like, oh, that's clever. Maybe he's gonna make it look like Leo did this, but no, it was just basically just a catch me if you can scenario here. Like, he poisoned her for really no good reason at all.
Well, I took that as, all right, now she's passed out. I'm going to run and go kill this girl and then come back. And I've been in here with this prostitute for the last 3 hours.
Maybe. Well, okay, then maybe you're saying he didn't poison her? Maybe he just knocked her out? I just kind of assumed he killed her.
I didn't read it that way.
Maybe you're right. Maybe you're right.
This dude's all about having alibis.
Yeah, which he did have a pretty good little alibi bit at the beginning of the movie where he was at the movie and he talked to those girls and perved on those girls, and then like in the middle of the movie he kind of slid out the window, went and killed people, and then and then came back and then just sat back in the back of the theater again. So of course, while Leo's dealing with the prostitute that's knocked out or dead or whatever she is, Warren goes back to the dorm of Laurie. And he basically stalks and kills all 3 of her roommates. And he's looking after her. And he grabs a hold of Laurie. And she manages to burn him with a curling iron. And that gives her enough, to escape his clutches and run down the street. Then Warren is literally, at the end of this movie, he's literally chasing her down the street, butt-ass naked. Hauling ass. Meanwhile, nobody's, like, there's a helicopter, like a police helicopter up above. And they're not shooting. They're not like, hey, stop, or anything. They're just, like, following it. Of course, right when it looks like Warren's about to grab Laurie, Leo shows up and, stops him just in time. So then, like, the cops descend on this situation. They've got Warren now. And, there's tons of cops around, like dozens. Helicopter above and everything. And he's basically screaming at Leo, like, fuck you, man. I'm just going to keep doing it. I'll get out. And,
I'm crazy.
Yeah, I'm crazy, and I'll admit it, and they'll just let me off, and I'll be right back out here doing it again. And then Leo just, no, you won't. Just shoots Warren right in the fucking forehead. Credits. So.
And then the funny part about all this is, like, he's being held back by cops. You can't take me like this. I'm gonna get out as soon as I can. All right, so Bronson shoots him, and then they show like an overhead shot.
Yep.
And there aren't any cops anywhere around him.
Nothing. They're just like, you know what? Fuck this. Yeah. Not worth taking a bullet for this motherfucker.
Well, we've discussed, like, Canon wasn't known for their big budgets and stuff, so maybe, like, that's just where they decided to end it. Like, all right, it's kind of an abrupt ending, and we're not going to take the time continuity-wise to make this overhead shot look any better than it should. So fuck it. Like, we've got enough. We've used up enough of the budget. That's it. We can only get this helicopter for 30 minutes. It's one of those like see Los
helicopters.
Yeah, like no, it's one of those see Los Angeles $10 a ride helicopters that you see down, like at the beach or in touristy places,
Now, I did read somewhere that in the final scene, like Bronson and Warren were supposed to actually fight, like hand to hand.
I saw that.
And Bronson was like, "Nope, not getting that close to a guy that's butt naked."
Hell no, he's naked. Fuck that shit.
Fucking Bronson.
Can I just shoot him in the forehead? Yeah, that'll work. Okay. So there you go, 10 to midnight. Now, I'll say, well, I guess we'll go ahead and get into the star ratings and everything because that's where we'll get our vast opinions. So, Donnie, I guess I'll toss to you first. What are your thoughts on old 10 to midnight? I guess, also all of us should add like whether this is the first time you've watched it or not, since we didn't, talk about that off the top, and then what's your star rating?
This is something we've talked about previously. The sleazy kind of nudity. It gives its, I guess kind of its appeal. You kind of know what you're getting with a Canon film. I guess in this respect, but it's not really violent to, I guess, by today's standards. But it's still bloody. Those are the things that I like. I would say it's probably got its, I don't know, maybe intentional or unintentional one-liners. And, Kelly Preston as well is definitely a plus for me. On the negative side, I kind of feel like this is the Charles Bronson that I did not grow up with. It's kind of Bronson light, if you would say. It's kind of slow. It dragged in spots for me. It's good enough for the reasons I stated, but once you see this is not really something that I would want to see again. But still, all the positives that I've stated previously, I would give it 2 3/4.
Donnie, did you say this is the first time you watched it or not? I don't remember if you said that.
I had actually seen bits and pieces of this many years ago without actually realizing what it was.
Okay.
I had watched it on, I'm going to say it was my grandparents' HBO, and it was like, wait a minute, tits. Yeah. Let's change the channel. So just like, yeah, fuck this. You're like 8 years old. You don't need to be watching this.
But Will, what is this the first time? What are your thoughts and star rating and all that?
Yeah, no, I've never seen it before. I think I'd heard of it, but yeah, never seen it before. So it's the first time viewing. I am online with a good portion of what Donnie said. Like this isn't the Bronson that we grew up watching. To me, the fact that it didn't have that much of him, doing typical Bronson things kind of took away from the movie. Like there are parts like the first couple minutes where, there's like actual things happening is good. After Bronson decides to be a psycho after he gets fired, that was the better part of the movie. The middle, there's some stuff going on. The character himself, Warren, interesting character. Feel like that could have been a movie to itself without Bronson. I don't know if that makes sense. Like to kind of like dig into why does he do this? How did he get here?
Yeah, maybe a prequel.
Yeah,
understand him a little more.
So for me, dude, I think I'm going to give it a 2. There are bits and pieces in here I enjoyed. It just felt like it was missing probably more Bronson.
All right, Smoke, same to you. I know this isn't the first time for you.
Yeah, I think this is the maybe 4th time I've seen it. First time I saw it was back in the VHS rental days. And I never owned a copy of this, though, on VHS, and I never owned a copy on DVD until, I do now, but it wasn't until not too many years ago, maybe 4 or 5 years ago, when I picked up the DVD.
Mm-hmm.
So not having owned it back then, I didn't get to watch it as many times as I did a lot of other Canon films or even Bronson films. But then the second time I saw it was screening that I mentioned in the Spotlight episode that we did with Paul, where the first time that I met Paul actually was when he was introducing 10 to Midnight at a First Friday lowbrow grindhouse cinema showing in that Columbia Theater downtown. So that was the second time I saw it. Now that was a fun experience, I have to say. Like if you think it's funny hearing Bronson deliver that, you know what this is for? It's for jacking off, isn't it? You know, if you think it's funny just hearing that as you're watching the movie in your living room, try watching that in the movie theater filled with people that are of like mind. You know.
Yeah.
that was hilarious. That was an experience in and of itself. This whole movie in the theater, by the way, I have a feeling that all of you would enjoy this movie more if you'd seen it that way. I know I enjoyed it more than I did when I saw it back in, you know, VHS days or whatever, when I saw it in that screening of it. As I mentioned, that first time I saw it, I enjoyed it for what it was, Charles Bronson and Cannon. And I believe this is his first movie for Cannon. I think Death Wish 2 he made, but I want to say that's before Cannon existed as a company, and I think it was just Golden Globus Enterprises. He made Death Wish 2, I believe.
No, that was a Cannon movie.
And I mean, I saw it when I was already well versed with Cannon. It wasn't like I didn't see it back in 1983 or whatever. It was probably a few years. It might have even been in the early 90s, late 80s when I finally saw it. So I'd already been well familiar with Cannon, so to speak. So when I first saw it, yeah, it definitely was right up that alley as far as Cannon film. And then seeing it in the theater, I got a new appraisal for it. So I'm gonna give it 3 3/4 stars. I really enjoy it. As you said, it's not the typical Bronson movie. And it's not Bronson necessarily at top form, but I still enjoy it for what it is. I mean, I love Cannon. I have a soft spot for Cannon films, so they're probably going to get a little bit higher rating just based on that. Just on my entertainment value with Cannon films. So, and I guess it's got its sleazy moments for sure, as we've talked about. And just hearing Bronson deliver that line is hilarious. There's some other one-liners like that as well. The whole aspect of, we didn't really talk about it too much, but the killer is kind of based on sort of an amalgamation of different serial killers. I think Richard Speck, he's got a little bit of him in there, and then Ted Bundy. And there's even a scene, I think, of him driving a Volkswagen right at one point, like Bundy drove.
Yeah.
And the fact that he was kind of like an attractive type serial killer, like some of the women had mentioned in the movie. So I think some of that, and Richard Speck was too, tying in some of that, real life type stuff with it, and then also the slasher movie aspect of it reminded me a little bit of Chuck Norris movie's Silent Rage, which kind of combines that whole action adventure horror movie format. That was another one I really enjoyed. So kind of in that same league too. So yeah, I enjoyed it. I'd go with 3 3/4 stars.
I'll add before I move into what I have to say about it. Death Wish 2 did come out before this, almost a year exactly. Death Wish 2 came out in February of 1982, and then this came out in March of 83. So at least as far as after, Golan and Globus had taken over Cannon Films, as, the guys that were running the show, this was the second film that Bronson had done with them. Yeah, I mean, I'll echo, I guess I'll just echo a lot of what you guys just said about it. I think it is fairly unique in a lot of ways, especially with the killer running around naked, right? Most of the movie. There is no mystery to this, right? It's a lot like New Year's Evil in a sense, where like you kind of know what's going on from the go as far as like who's doing this. At that point you're just trying to unpack, like, are they going to catch this guy, and what are his motivations and everything. It's kind of what the journey that you take along the way, once you get there. But yeah, like there's a lot of good one-liners. I will agree with Will, like, once he basically goes nuclear and tries to frame the guy, and then he gets, and then he admits to it, that's where you get like a little bit of the crazy Bronson going on. Like I said, he was following him down the road and smiling at him and just fucking with him and stuff like that. So like that was definitely where it got turned up and it became a better movie for me. But overall, I enjoyed it. I think it's a lot of fun for what it is. There's a lot of different kind of genres going on here with the mystery, thriller, action, horror elements, with the slasher type stuff, all that. So yeah, I think I'm going to go with 3 stars. Solid flick. And like Smoke said, Cannon films are probably going to, rank a little higher than most, on my scale. But like, I'll just compare it directly to say one that we did recently, once again with New Year's Evil. I like this better than New Year's Evil. So with that, all that out of the way, we'll toss to our first little segment here.
Connections from the crypt.
Golan and Globus, as far as connections from past episodes, they were tied to New Year's Evil. That's really the only connection I don't want to say the only, but there's not. Typically we try to go with the one who has the most connections from either the cast or the crew. On the crew side, it's basically Golan and Globus with New Year's Evil. On the cast side, it's Jeffrey Lewis with Devil's Rejects, and it's also Shay Duffin, who also played a character in the Leprechaun from 1993.
All right, so I guess that'll naturally lead to our next segment.
All right, so in this one, I came up with 7. So we've got the guy in the van. He got stabbed. The girl in the wood, she got stabbed. The roommate, she got stabbed. And the 3 people in the dorm room, wait for it, they got stabbed. And last but not least, Warren got shot in the head.
Yeah. So maybe that was the gimmick. Like they left the most brutal, the one bullet for him, Well, I guess but at least that's probably one of the more memorable moments is that at the end, right?
That's true. And also something I read is in that final scene where he's killing the 3 girls in the dorm room, apparently he gets kind of so caught up in the moment, he ends up dislocating one of the girls' arms.
Damn.
In the scene.
I'm sorry, I laugh at pain.
That's called method acting. Just yank a girl's arm out of the socket. Jesus. So that naturally leads us to you, Smoke.
Gore score.
This is kind of a little difficult in rating gore score because really, if you straight up gore, there's not a whole lot of visceral graphicness to it. Because, as Will mentioned, they're stabbing, so there's not like limbs being cut off, decapitations or disembowelings or anything like that. So it's not overly gory, but it's pretty brutal. The attacks are pretty brutal. They're kind of done in somewhat of a semi-realistic sort of serial killer type way rather than your typical go for the gore slasher kind of. And as we mentioned, he's naked while he's doing it, so that adds another dimension to it. So it's just a bit more sleazy than your average kill, slasher movie or whatever. Even though the kills aren't as graphic, it's a little difficult in rating that way. I mean, I'm torn between whether I'm giving it a 6 or a 7.
Here, Smoke. Before you give us your score, remember that the blade is his penis.
Right, penetrating.
Well, taking that into account, it's a 10.
Let's go with 7.
All right, so I guess that'll pretty much put a bow on 10 to Midnight. Our first, and I'm sure won't be our last Charles Bronson movie. I can guarantee you that. I'm sure we'll, especially now that we're kind of broadening our horizons with Cult Corner and maybe not so much Crapster Theater, over on Patreon. But you get the point. We're going to be watching movies other than just pure horror here on the show.
As far as that, we'll be broadening our horizons and lowering our expectations. For
yeah.
Yeah.
We're gonna have to come up with a whole different scale. We've kind of talked about that off and on, in our discussions about this whole new series. We're gonna have to have a whole different type of scale for Crapster Theater. So we'll go into that whenever the time finally comes. I don't think we're gonna get around to that. Maybe we don't in February for Crapster but definitely by March we'll be dipping our toes in that pool. But we will be getting around to Cult Corner coming up, or later on this month here in the month of February. I can say that since it's January 31st, and February is literally a few hours away. But we'll be getting into the Cult Corner and everything. We got the polls out, so go over. You got until midnight tonight, matter of fact, to go vote.
Yeah.
To go vote in the poll for Cult Corner. Those four, which we didn't discuss at the top of the show, and we probably should have. Those four were The Warriors, Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas. Help me out, guys. What are the other two?
Assault on Precinct 13.
Yeah, the original the original John Carpenter Assault on Precinct 13. What was the fourth one?
Bloodsport.
Bloodsport. Yeah, there you go. Those are your four choices. You have until midnight tonight to be counted into the poll. You can go anywhere on our socials: Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, Slasher app, and even over on Patreon. It's free to vote on this poll. Even over on patreon.com/AA Spookshow. Go and have your voice, your voice counted, your vote heard, and then we'll be announcing those probably within this week, probably on Deadline Horror News Live. this Wednesday night, we'll be announcing the winner of that. So lots of big stuff coming up in the month of February, and we are quickly approaching the 100th episode in March. We've been talking about it, and we've got some big plans coming up for that. So just want to put that on your calendar. If all goes to schedule, that'll be coming up on March 21st. So just keep that in mind. We got something big planned. Hopefully there's some cool stuff coming up for the Spook Show over the next couple months. So, but like I said earlier, next week we'll be welcoming special guest Austin Trunick. He's the author of the Canon Film Guide, Volume 1, 1980 to 1984. And Volume 2 of that, his series, will be coming out. Hopefully, we've heard from him in the springtime. So the second book of that series will be a thing. And hopefully we'll have him on then. But next week we'll be talking to him, about Canon Films, about the book and everything. So come back and check that out. Hopefully it'll be a really cool interview and you don't want to miss it. And then, of course, the following week, we don't know we're not ready to announce the winner just yet because the poll closes once again at midnight tonight. But there's a Valentine's
4:10 till midnight.
Yeah. Actually, it's like 1 to midnight when the poll closes. But that'll also be tonight over on patreon.com/Spookshow. That's the one last thing. There's a poll for what we're going to watch on Valentine's Day. And the 3 choices are Valentine, Pontypool, and My Bloody Valentine, the remake from 2009, I believe it was. So those are your 3 Valentine's choices for what we're going to watch, on February 14th. So go vote, like I said, on both those polls. You can go to Patreon for both of them and all the other places. Vote, get it in by midnight tonight. So for Will, Donnie, Professor Smoke, I'm Josh. We are the All-American Spook Show Horror Podcast, and we will talk to you next week.
And now, folks, it's time to say goodnight. We sincerely appreciate your patronage and hope we've succeeded in bringing you an enjoyable evening of entertainment. Please drive home carefully and come back again soon. Good night.